Hello and welcome to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. My name is Larry Bodine and I'm the president. I'll be your host today. We have a terrific speaker in Nancy Gutierrez, who is running for State House in Legislative District 18. Now, Nancy has taught yoga at Tucson High for 9 years, and she's currently on the safety committee at Tucson High Magnet School. Nancy was the president of the Tucson National Organization for Women chapter in 2018. Nancy's platform is to ensure that Arizona sets as a priority public education, teachers, students, and staff. Her platform also includes fighting for all women to have reproductive freedom and care. And she also advocates never to allow guns on any campus and to close loopholes that allow gun sales at gun shows. She is a member of Moms Demand Action. And with that, Nancy, the floor is yours.
And I remember on the first day, way back then, the parents came in and they wanted me to practically show them ID because they didn't think that I was old enough to teach their 6-year-olds. Nobody says that to me anymore, but they used to say that to me in classrooms. So, times change. But I taught first and then I taught second grade. And then I actually got married Christmas time when I was teaching second grade and my students came to my wedding. But my husband was in the military at the time. So we moved to Fort Drum, New York. For this Arizona girl was quite a change. And it snows feet there, not inches. So that was the start of our marriage 26 years ago. And I couldn't get a teaching job because I wasn't New York certified. So I ended up teaching on post. I taught the soldiers basic skills so they could pass their basic skills tests. And I loved that. I really enjoyed showing people who thought they couldn't do math that they really could. And then I ended up teaching math at community college, at Jefferson Community College in New York. So it brought me lots of opportunities that I really didn't know that I would have, but they called me and said, well, we see you took statistics in college, so you can teach it, right? And of course I said, absolutely, I can teach it. So I do have a history of jumping into things head first, and then being able to pull it off with lots of hard work and determination. Like I mentioned, we were in Fort Drum, New York, and my husband, we were there 10 days and he had to go into the field for 30. And this was 1996. So it was before the days of cell phones. And I immediately thought, what the heck have I done? I'm not sure that this is what I signed up for. So, he came back and we were miserable, and we went to the priest that was assigned to his unit and gave him our sob story. And he said, well, let me tell you something. You can be miserable or you can be happy. And it's your choice. Nothing here, your circumstances are not going to change. You're here, you're away from family, and it's your choice whether you're going to be miserable or happy. And to this day, I am so appreciative of that great advice because he was right. And we made a choice to be happy and make the most of what was there. And I've even used that advice in this campaign because, of course, a campaign has ups and downs. Having a campaign and teaching full time and having a graduating senior is somewhat stressful. And I've decided that I'm going to enjoy every minute and learn all I can. So moving on, I taught, then we were stationed in Sierra Vista. I taught 1-2 multi-age there, changed into my suit in a Burger King in Sierra Vista, driving with all of our stuff from New York. Then we kept moving, but he got out of the military. We went to Las Vegas and I taught for kindergarten and first there, and we had our first daughter. But also we decided to make some changes. So I left the classroom for a little while and created a small business with a friend of mine, and it was called Two Girls Travel. And it was an online travel agency. We had a franchise. Unfortunately, we started about a month before the tragedy of 9/11. So we had some hardships. We kept that going for about a year, but the business experience was great for me. Then we moved to Sacramento, California with my husband's job, and I became a salesperson for a textbook company. And that was really fun. I got to interact with teachers and teach them about the textbooks. The hard part about that was when I came back, we moved back to Arizona in 2007, but when I started teaching at Tucson High in 2013, I was upset to discover that those same textbooks that I was selling in 2002 were the ones in the Tucson High classroom in 2013. And they're still there to this day. So that's another problem that we have in our state with no funding. We have those textbooks from early 2000s, and things have changed. We moved back to Tucson here with our daughters in 2007, and I was the stay-at-home mom. Luckily, I'm very blessed to have been able to do that. So I volunteered weekly at Manzanita Elementary School and at Orange Grove Middle School, and I became the FFO, which is Family Faculty Organization there. And that's instead of a PTA. That's what they have. So, and my treasurer back then was Cindy Reynolds, and she is my treasurer on my campaign to this day. I was a dance mom, ran the snack bar for many years for Kids Unlimited with my daughters. And then in 2008, I got my teaching certification at Yoga Oasis here locally in town, and started teaching yoga classes all over Tucson and running that contract business on my own. I met a woman at Yoga Oasis who said she taught at Tucson High, and I thought, wow, they teach real yoga at a high school in town. That's incredible. And I remember driving by Tucson High thinking, that's the place where I want to be. Well, a couple months later, without even looking into it, Tucson High called me and said, we have too many classes that have yoga students. It was 2 weeks into the semester, and they said, do you still have your teaching license? And I had kept it up all these years. And I went in, met the principal, and I started that very next week with 4 classes of 30 students each, not all of whom had requested yoga. And they'd had a substitute for 2 weeks who had told them that they were thugs. So that's how I started my teaching career in Tucson High in yoga. It was a baptism by fire. And I found out that my elementary teaching skills came in handy because I knew how to be organized. I knew how to set expectations, and I knew how to persuade people to my point of view. And I think those skills will help me in the legislature. I've loved teaching yoga at Tucson High. I was the department chair for 5 years. I just stepped down this year because I knew I was going to run for office and wanted to get something off of my plate. But I am still on the safety committee, making sure that we have safe campuses for our students and our staff and our teachers. After the 2016 election, there were several of us that started up the Tucson chapter of National Organization for Women, and I was on the board for that. And then in 2018, after Victoria Steele stepped down, I was elected their president and was proud to serve. And during that time, we fought with some representatives and senators to get our women inmates more period products. Before that, they were being rationed out at a very ridiculous rate. So we worked together, and you all had mentioned Diane Post. I worked with her because I was also part of the State Now committee, and she's wonderful. I still get her updates weekly about the ledge. We also brought the Now Arizona State Conference to Tucson, and that was great because it had not been in Tucson for many, many years. So while being at Tucson High, I've seen in my classroom, we have no windows. I have one, they did give me an air filter since the pandemic, but the filter has not been changed since March of last year. I did switch my teaching completely and taught online for 1.5 years. We have teachers who are sharing rooms across campus because we have rooms in our building that have asbestos, but we don't have the money in the budget to mitigate the asbestos. So teachers are having to use part of their prep period, to go from classroom to classroom. I am a member of the teachers union, a proud member of the teachers union, and I was just in Phoenix a couple weeks ago as a delegate for the Tucson Assembly for their state meeting. In yoga, we teach about sex ed every year. We do a week-long unit on sexual education, and every year my husband says, "You're going to get fired, Nancy. That's it. Kiss it goodbye," because we talk about real things with students, but we also feel it's part of the yoga curriculum, and we feel that it's important because many of our students do not get that sex education because they've had teachers that refuse to teach it. At Tucson High, we have 3 health teachers, and only one of them teaches the full family life curriculum. 2 teach abstinence only. And I will tell you, just last week, one of my former students, she came at the beginning of this year and she was in my yoga class, left after a couple of weeks because she found out she was pregnant. She brought the baby to see me just last week. So our students need sex education and they need to know the real truth about it. So we do that in yoga. I am a gun sense candidate. I've been working with Moms Demand Action and going through their Demand a Seat program. And we had a drive-by shooting across the street from our campus this year, last semester. And none of our students were hurt, thank goodness. But after the lockdown, I was talking to my students about it, kind of processing what had happened. And they said, "Oh yeah, miss, I heard the gunshots, but I figured, well, that's just Tucson." And it broke my heart that would be a norm, that they would hear gunshots and think, well, that's just Tucson. So that's why I've been working with Moms Demand Action and believe that we should never allow loaded weapons on a campus, like the Republicans were trying to get loaded weapons in on school parking lots this year, and it almost passed. I've also worked with the union and with we call them ESPs. They're all the staff members. So they're secretaries, they're security people, they are the aides that come with our exceptional ed students. I've worked with them because some of them are still making $13 an hour after 15 and 20 years in our district. And that's unacceptable. Some of these amazing people that we could not run the school without are making less after 15 years in our schools than their own children make when they go to McDonald's and work. That's criminal. These people are literally the backbone of our school. I teach yoga, so I am lucky enough to have exceptional ed students in my class and students with autism in my class with the general ed population. And it's one of the things that I love most about what I teach. And some of them come with aides. And these are paraprofessionals who, follow these kids around, get them to where they're supposed to be. And I don't know what I would do without them, because with 30 students in my class, and when a couple of them have special needs, I need the help. And they should be paid what they're worth. This year, there has been legislation to ban trans students from sports in high schools. And I think this is such a horrible thing. Sports unite students. Sports give students a different way to belong and to fit in. And for the state of Arizona to not allow students to play sports because they happen to know that they're a different gender than what the body that they were born into is a travesty. I will fight against that. They just passed a parents' knowledge bill, which would mean that if a student comes out to me as a teacher, I would be obligated to tell the parents. I will tell you, I've had many students come out to me. In my classroom, there is a sign that says, "Just be yourself." That's all I want them to be in my room, is exactly who they are. And this bill would want me to, tell their parents everything that they tell me. I'm not going to do that. Because if students are telling me something like that, it's because they can't tell their parents. I'm a mandatory reporter, which means if I hear or think something harmful is happening in a student's life, I am obligated to call the police. I have to report that. And of course I would, but that's not what this is about. This is about a student asking me to call them a different name than is on the roster because it doesn't match their gender. I'm going to call them that name. I have a student right now whose mom wants him to just be the girl that he was born as, and she will not call him by his chosen name. I can't do that. I'm going to call him by the name he asked me to call him, because that's giving him the dignity and respect that he deserves. So also being a teacher, I don't make light of it, but it is true that, I have 30 students, 5 classes. I have taught 6 classes in years past. And a lot of them sign up for yoga as their PE credit because they don't want to be outside sweating and running the mile. And some of them choose it as an elective. Some of them choose it to take it a second year, but some of them don't choose it because the PE department is the great catch-all, as you will. We get the kids who they're like, oh, well, we don't have any more classes to put this child in. Here, go to yoga. And I'm happy to take them all. But they come into my classroom a little skeptical about what they're going to do. And then I ask them to take off their shoes and their socks, which I didn't know was going to be a big deal in 2013, but I will tell you, students do not like to take their socks off, but they do in my class. And then I have them do all kinds of crazy things, including handstands and back bends. And they really don't know what to make of me for a while, but they end up coming around and doing what I've asked them to do, because we create this space of mutual respect. And I want to bring that to the legislature. And I know that I can. I know that I can. It's my power of persuasion. I have taught through the pandemic. None of the other candidates that I am running against, one has teaching experience, but not since 1994 and not through the pandemic. And I will tell you that that has taught me more in this since 1994 than any other teaching experience I've had. Flipping our curriculum on a dime, getting students to show up when they're in their room on their computer, and having them turn on their computer so that we can do yoga together. It was daunting and fulfilling at the same time. So why run for this legislative office right now? That's what a lot of people ask me. Why are you doing this? And I have some good reasons. My youngest daughter is graduating from Tucson High not next week. This week in a couple days. I'll be okay. And she'll be at NAU next year. My older daughter graduated from the U of A in December, and she's figuring things out. I just turned 50 in April, and I'm feeling it. Like, I'm really feeling my 50-year-old self. So it's the next chapter of my life. I have a passion for public education. I think every single student in our state deserves a quality and equitable education. I feel like my daughters should be able to raise their family in Arizona if they choose. And of course, if we do not do something about our water crisis, they will not be able to, because we are in a water crisis right now. And I want to take my experience as a community leader, an activist, a wife, a mom, and a teacher to the House. I'm also passionate about a person's right to choose what they do with their body. I cannot believe that my daughters might not have the same rights to abortion that I have had. I was born in 72. Roe v. Wade was 73. I will not allow them to not have this right. I will fight and fight and fight. We deserve that right. I've just spoken at Bands Off Our Bodies rally last week, and at the rally on the Tuesday before that. And I'm working with the women's group to fight for that right. Arizona List has endorsed me, and actually they just sent out an email about that this morning. I have learned so much about being a candidate from them. I've met with great people in the teachers union, in the carpenters union, community leaders, and I really feel that I am the best person to come together as a community, because it is like a classroom, and fight for all of these rights and work with people who maybe other folks have had a hard time working with. I've gone up to the legislature and shadowed Pam Powers Hanley. She was nice enough to give me time to do that. And I learned a lot, met a lot of people, met some other teachers up there. I will fight for our community, and I will listen to our community. I've always said that the best teachers are the best students, and I have learned so much during this process, and I will continue to learn from all of you, and from the people of LD18. So my name is Nancy Gutierrez, and I'm running for the state house in LD18, and I'm asking for your vote, and I would love to take questions from you. I have a link tree that has a bunch of my links in it, and I'll put that in the chat right now. There we go. There is my link tree.
Well, super. Thanks so much. That was a terrific presentation. I want to open the floor for questions now. I'm just dying to ask, Nancy, since you're teaching in schools, the Republicans are all upset about critical race theory being taught in schools. So does that even exist in schools?
No. Critical race theory is not taught in K through 12 education. It's just not. Do I think we need to teach Arizona's and the United States true history? Absolutely, 100%. But that's not critical race theory. Lucy, I see your hand. Hi.
Hi, Nancy. How's it going?
Hi.
You were talking about the ESPs and the situation that has been truly horrible. Are you familiar with the contract that they got, raising teaching assistants, health assistants, and the monitors to $15 an hour? And then they added the 1% for compression for each year that they worked. And while it may not be enough, it is certainly a good start. But I just wanted to make sure you had those figures, because TEA negotiated a very good contract for their employees, both teachers and assistants and educators.
Yes, I am familiar with that. I did see that, and I can't wait to hear that when it really happens. I know that our ESPs are a little bit trepidatious. They want to see the money in their paycheck. They should at least be at $15 an hour. And I know they appreciated the compression with the 1% per year. So definitely, I think always more can be done, but I absolutely appreciate what TEA has done in their negotiating. And I've been trying to work at Tucson High to get more members to join TEA, because I think, the more of us there are, the stronger our voice will be. Absolutely. Thanks, Lucy.
I have a question for you, Nancy, and that is, you've raised a lot of super important issues. And when you're elected to the legislature, what will be the first piece of legislation that you plan to introduce?
Well, definitely fully funding public education and with no vouchers. Our Republican-run government in Arizona has been trying to privatize, and they have been privatized. They haven't just tried, they've been privatizing our public education for decades. That must be stopped. We have $5 billion in excess in the budget, in a surplus. And I just actually wrote an opinion article about that, and it was published about what we could do with all of those funds. And we could do a lot of give a lot of one-time benefits to our schools, but we have to have a budget that supports our public schools and doesn't keep giving our money to private schools and charter schools that have absolutely no oversight, because they really don't. They don't give the tests that we give. They don't have the checks and balances that we do. So that would be my first priority. But shortly after that, abortion, the environment, all of the things that we as Democrats hold very dear, we need help with those.
Jeannie, go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry.
I have to say how grateful I am for your being there for the students. kids that age need someone. I remember high school, them trying to talk to their parents was just awful. But, your interaction with the trans students, I'd like to know, is like high school an age that trans students become more vocal about it? Or do you think that they know they're trans from an earlier age? Questions, isn't it?
No, that's okay, Jeannie. That's, when I was teaching younger ages, they were definite. It wasn't even talked about, which I tell my students a lot. When I was in high school, we just didn't speak about any of this. So they teach me a lot. I definitely have seen my high schoolers really know themselves and know who they are. But I've seen heard about kids who are much younger. I think it's kind of a fluid process. Honestly, I don't know that. I think it takes some people until they're well into adulthood to really understand their personhood, because a lot of students are actually taught that that is unacceptable. So they kind of just try and shove it out of their minds because they want to please their parents and they want to be good and be what their parents want them to be. So some of them, it's not even that they are sure yet, that in LGBTQ, the Q is questioning. And I think that it's great to question, so I just encourage open communication, and I listen a lot because, they just need somebody to listen to them. I did want to add though, that when you were talking about that, I have a period closet in my classroom that I supply myself with pads and tampons and things like that. And any student in the whole school can come in and get what they need because, I even have extra clothes that they can use because they tell me that they're sometimes shamed for going to the nurse. It's like, well, why didn't you know you were getting your period? And it's like, okay, as women, we don't know. Like in high school, you didn't know. So things like that that maybe some of you don't know is happening in schools, that's happening. And so that's another one of the things that in public education, we should have money that we should have period closets in every building in every school, starting in elementary school, because girls get their period in elementary school for the first time and they don't know what to do. I see more hands, so I will zip it and call on.
All right.
I don't know who was first.
Let's see here. Joe Danishevsky, what have you got for us?
Yeah, just a reinforcement. There's some great information now in the chat room, thanks to Lucy and thanks to Larry, about a wonderful op-ed piece that Nancy wrote in the last week in the Arizona Daily Star. I think actually Kat just wrote, another one of the candidates wrote an op-ed piece too in the recent future. So good to see the activity and the information. Let's see. Here's a good question. Rod Norrish. What do you think needs to be done in the legislature to protect and enhance voting rights? What do you think should be done to protect against fraud in the 2024 election?
Thank you. I think voting should be convenient. I really do. I think what we've been doing, there has been no fraud seen. And goodness knows they tried to find some fraud in it and no one could. So I really think that we should continue what we're doing with now we don't have permanent early voter, it's active voter list. Mail-in voting is wonderful. Our Pima County recorder, Ms. Caceres Kelly, is getting more voting centers in Pima County, which I think is fantastic. And I fully support her. I actually just have, we got you can't see it because it's darn background. There it is. We're all getting our new voting cards in the mail, and she put some amazing and easy QR codes and information for voters. So I will fight for our voting rights, because if we don't have our voting rights, we don't have a democracy. A democracy depends on everyone voting. I also, I think that voting should be, or signing up to vote, becoming a voter should be talked about in the senior year government classes, and even having students get out their laptops and go ahead and sign up and become voter registered in those classes is a great idea. I know some teachers do that, but wouldn't it be nice if all teachers did? I actively talk to my students about voting and becoming registered voters, no matter what party they want to be. I support that. And we used to do that on school campuses and have groups come in, but since COVID, we have not started that again. So thank you for that question. Susie and Christina, I've seen your hands up. I don't know, whoever wants
to. Go ahead,
to.
Christina.
Hi, Nancy. And Nancy, you've come to Drinking Democratically, one of our happy hours. So
yes,
it's nice to meet you there. Just a question. You were saying that there are things that you are doing, even though the school really doesn't want you to do that. So when it comes to being in the legislature, how are you going to have that same feeling? I'm going to get this done no matter what. Are you going to be able to work okay with Republicans?
Right. Thank you for that question. I operate in the rules. You know, I am a teacher, so I am a rule follower. And I respect that we have to have rules in order to have order. So the school knows that I teach a week of sex ed. As far as the law about not outing my students to their parents, that's a great question because that's a moral dilemma for me, to be honest. And I feel like I would rather be that voice and challenge that law, even, you know, if I have to get a lawyer to do that, because I don't feel that that's I just feel morally obligated to my students. So I would fight in that way. Working with Republicans, I can work with anyone. You know, I talk to parents who, you know, don't necessarily want their students in yoga for whatever reason. I have worked with teachers. You know, not all teachers feel the same way about things. And we had many discussions about masking or not masking and how that would help, especially on the safety committee. And I really do a good job of listening, making sure people are heard, and then coming to a solution that we can both live with, at least temporarily. Now, some of the people I'm not even sure that they're Republicans anymore. I call them the radical right in our legislature. I grew up with Republican parents, I will tell you that, and they were nothing like what we're seeing now. But I'm always respectful and listen, and then I'm going to get the job done and recruit others to help me. So thank you.
All right, we have a question from Susie Anderson. Susie, go right ahead.
Well, first a comment, Nancy, and thank you for being here. And thank you for being such a staunch supporter of gay and trans students. But I have friends and family members who have known since they were children that but they don't talk about it, you're right, until they are older and maybe experience that there are others out there. They don't feel like they're the only ones. Younger kids don't have the language or the information to deal with that. Can you help your students with recycling, reusing, making what we have instead of throwing things into the landfill, saving our earth? Do you use any of that in your curriculum?
Yes. Thank you, Susie, for asking that. Yes, I absolutely do. I mean, that is very yogic, right? To respect our earth and to not waste. So we do a little bit of, writing in yoga, taking notes. And so everyone has a journal, a notebook that they use all year. And then when they're done with that, if they don't want to take them home, they give them to me so that I can use them again the next year. At the beginning of this year, I got donations from my neighborhood, from anyone who would talk to me, really, of reusable water bottles, because many of our students would love to use a reusable water bottle, but they can't afford it, or their parents say, I'm sorry, that's not in the budget this month. So I just put out messages on Facebook and in my neighborhood network where I live. And gosh, I collected a lot of reusable water bottles and just gave them out to any student, not just my students, but any student that wanted them. And so that's something I really want to continue from year to year. As far as recycling, Tucson High has a farm club and a recycle club. So we try to work with them and promote that, so the students become more in charge of that than the teachers. Because I mean, our students, they know that the environment needs saving. They know they're so smart and so proactive. So I absolutely support them in that. Could we do more? 100%, absolutely. And that'll come. But yes, we do that. Thank you so much for asking that.
Right. I have a question that was sent to me as a direct message, but from Andrea Kennedy. She was referring to the part of your talk where you mentioned your experience gave you the ability to persuade someone to another point of view. And Andrea would like to know, can you give an example of when you persuaded someone to your point of view? Have you ever had a discussion of somebody regarding abortion where they didn't think it was a right that people should have?
I mean, I've talked to my family and friends about that for many, many years. And my first NOW conference I went to in college in 1993. So I have always felt that. And even members of my family have not always been on that anyone should be able to have an abortion for any reason. So I do talk about that. And actually, here's an example. Speaking of that, my mom has been a lifelong Republican. And, I've been telling her all the amazing things about, our Democratic colleagues and politics over the years. And she called me up a few weeks ago. This was probably November, right after I announced my campaign. And she said, you know what? I'm not a Republican anymore. And I nearly dropped the phone and fell over, because those are words that I never thought my 75-year-old mother would say. But she said, it's not the party that it used to be. And everything that you've been talking about these years and years and years, some of it sank in. So she's an independent, which I appreciate. But I mean, that is an example. It took many, many years, but sometimes it's going to take many, many years to convince people, one way or the other. But I'm relentless. I never stopped, even when I didn't think it would be a possibility that she would change.
We have a question from Joe Danishevsky.
Yes.
My question,
definitely.
Nancy, for you is, have you thought about any legislation down the road that would encourage and support small businesses?
Well, I definitely think we should encourage and support small businesses. I have a small business myself that has really been cut short because of the pandemic. It's called Yoga for Youth. And we were teaching, my business partner, Lori, and I were teaching school age kids from 4 to 12 years old yoga after school at Yoga Oasis. And we tried it on Zoom and it just didn't work. So I definitely think that as a community in Tucson, we do support small businesses. I mean, we Tucsonans are great about, local restaurants, local businesses, and the state should support that. I know that there's policy that would, especially with a $5 billion surplus, we could definitely afford to give cities and towns some money for incentives for small businesses and maybe even struggling businesses, especially after the pandemic. I mean, PPP loans were one thing, but with a $5 billion surplus, why not use some of that money to really boost our small businesses and help them grow?
Did anybody read the news about the laws that Governor Ducey just signed, saying that they can't make COVID vaccinations part of the list of vaccinations that are needed to get into school?
I did read that, and there's not one teacher that is surprised by that at all. We have been, bombarded with, no masking and fights about that. Even at the latest TUSD board, there was a person there, not a parent of a TUSD student, but someone saying, talking about the masks. We don't have a mask mandate right now at TUSD, but they're still bombarding us with that. To be honest with you, I still mask at school, and about 50% of my students still mask. And I believe that's why I've not gotten COVID yet, knock on wood, because it is rampant every single day. These past 2 weeks, I've had another parent or student emailing me saying, what can we do about the final? They are COVID positive. So unfortunately, our state government has not supported us in the COVID pandemic. I didn't think they would, but that is something that we need to really look at and change, because public health is hugely important. And we actually had a teacher die in about the first 9 months of COVID. So that was devastating to our school. He'd been there for over 20 years, and it is something we need to look into, but I'm not surprised that he passed that law. I went up to the state legislature with the teachers union for a day of action, and we were wearing masks, but none of the Republicans were wearing masks at all.
Well, we're getting low on time. Nancy, I was wondering if you could wrap up with us. You had made reference to you're feeling your 50s. And I just wanted to say you've got so much to look forward to when you hit your 70s.
All right.
Tell us how people can reach you. How can we support you? And if people want to, how can they volunteer with you?
Yes, I would love volunteers. Really quickly, I wanted to just acknowledge Karen Gleason put in the chat that I taught her trans child, and I'm just so glad that was a good experience for them. I put my link tree in the chat, and that has my website, my email, and my Act Blue donation account. I welcome all volunteers. I can use great door knockers if you like to call people and do phone banking. House parties have been a wonderful way for neighborhoods to meet me and for me to meet them and to hear what's important to them in our community. So if you would like to do any of that, I would greatly appreciate it. I do believe I am the best candidate for this job, and I want to be the LD18, one of the next state representatives. And I will bring this passion and this work ethic and this fire to the state house. And I just appreciate you all having me and you all being so open and kind. I'm going to put my Gmail account in the chat. I just put it in there, and you can always reach out by email. And I go to the Drinking Democratically Wednesdays. I've had to miss a couple because of dance performances and, mom things. But I plan to be there next month. And I just appreciate all of your help. It does take a village to get a teacher to the house. And I really just appreciate your time and your consideration today.
Thank you so much, Nancy. We really appreciate your time and your insight and all the information you provided. And with that, we've run out of time, and I'm going to bring the meeting to a close. I look forward to seeing all of you at our next Drinking Democratically meeting. And with that, see you at the next meeting.